Remember this?
This is my vow to you. I will keep up with both platforms, and by the end of the year I'll have enough experience in both where I'll do another comparisons video.
Well, it's finally time after 1 year of testing and updating both Goodreads and the StoryGraph. In this video, I'm going to share my honest thoughts and the answer to the question, will I switch from Goodreads to the StoryGraph or not? First things first, let's do a little recap of the year to date. I started the year by refreshing my Abandon the StoryGraph account and getting it in sync with my Goodreads one. Basically, both accounts have the same books, tags, reviews, and settings for the most part. I then spent some time looking at all the StoryGraph's features I totally missed in the years I abandoned ship. Next, I poked and prodded each platform to see if they're quite as trustworthy as we think. And finally, I did a mid-year review talking about my thoughts, struggles, and opinions so far. Now, almost 12 months later, I've been updating both platforms, trying new features, and I have some thoughts to share. Let's start with Goodreads, because honestly, there's not much to say. In the last 12 months, they've released no new features, so Goodreads is the same platform it was when I started this year's experiment. The only significant things that have happened are the various awards they have going on. Aside from the lack of new features, Goodreads still remains a solid platform. It's reliable, quick, and easy to use. Because it hasn't made any changes, you could argue that it requires nothing extra from you. You know where everything is located and how it works. Because it's fast, you can use it to quickly look up books on the go. Although, to be honest, the app has lately been a little slow. If you've been on the platform for a while, in my case 10 years, then you know exactly what to expect. In comparison, the StoryGraph has released constant changes, bug fixes, and new features that I've been able to test out. I talked about buddy reads and read-alongs in my previous video, but since then I've been able to test out a few more features, one of which is reading challenges. I feel like reading challenges are one of the highlights of the StoryGraph. They're incredibly versatile and I've used them in a few different ways this year. A reading challenge on the StoryGraph can be anything from a standard reading goal like 70 books a year, to a set of specific books you want to read, or a set of prompts where participants can add their own books to the prompt that they'd like to read. If you're someone who likes to create monthly TBRs, these are amazing because you can add specific books, set a date for the TBR, and have at it. These can also be public or private, which is an added bonus. There are also public challenges you can join to read all the books by a specific author, themed read-alongs with prompts, you name it. You can create it or join it. This year I joined a cozy read-along in September, and seeing the progress meter fill up was a lot of fun, even if I ended up DNFing a few books. I've also been using these challenges to keep up with my unfinished series and creating private monthly TBRs for myself. You can even add little notes to each of your books within the challenge, so if one of the books is a buddy read, for example, you can add that reminder there. I would say it's a shame that they are so difficult to find and a little hard to understand at first though. To create anything other than a standard reading goal, you have to go to challenges and then browse before you can create a new one. If that could be a tiny bit more streamlined, that would be fantastic. One of the other things I really enjoy about the StoryGraph is the ability to change the edition or the format you're reading the book in. So if you're reading a book, say as an audiobook, it's pretty straightforward to switch to this format when you select the book. This kind of thing is useful if you like looking at your stats on the StoryGraph, because it will separate out the format you read your books in within the stats. If you're not interested in that though, then there's kind of no point. You can't really do this in Goodreads, or if you can, it's so convoluted I have no idea how to do it. Which brings me on to the stats. Goodreads has your end of year book roundup, which is quite fun, but the StoryGraph just hits it out of the park. Not only do you get to see your reading stats in real time as you read more books, but they now do these cute little graphics you can download and share with others. I've been adding these little roundup posts to my Discord server for a few months now, and it makes sharing the books you've read, how many pages, and your ratings super easy and fun. But there is still a little something that makes me hesitate when it comes to switching over to the StoryGraph, especially when you compare it to Goodreads, and that is the book page. Let's take a look at a Goodreads book page alongside the same book but on the StoryGraph. When you load a Goodreads book page, you can see at a glance the average star rating right at the top. I hate to say it, but this is important to me. If a book has a low or average rating, I'll either skip it or I'll look closely at the reviews to see what exactly is going on. Essentially, it's one of the biggest factors at play when I'm deciding if I'm going to read a book or not. On the StoryGraph, this average rating is very low, down on the page. I also prefer the review structure on the book page on Goodreads. Yes, it's useful to see more specific details like mood and pace, but seeing the breakdown of how many people voted for different ratings is completely missing from StoryGraph. I would love to see that breakdown on the StoryGraph. It's helpful to know why the majority of people voted in a certain way, especially when I'm at a bookstore and I need information quickly. When you then click See All Reviews on the StoryGraph, you can't filter them like you can on Goodreads. I really want to be able to see the breakdown and specifically look at reviews that are low or high to get a well-rounded view. Not including profile pictures of the reviewers also takes away that human element, and we need that social proof to trust the reviewer. I get the feeling that reviews on the StoryGraph are second to the book breakdown on the book page. After all, it's given higher priority than reviews, so it makes sense. Because of this though, I get the feeling that the majority of reviewers will put together a basic review that focuses on the star rating and the breakdown and don't bother with actually writing a review. It's all of this that makes Goodreads the app I still gravitate towards when I want to make a decision or look up information on a book when I'm out and about. But there's one more thing I want to talk about in this video, and that's the ethics and purpose of both of these platforms. The StoryGraph is Black-owned, developed by one person, is a very small team, and has its heart in the right place. Goodreads is owned by Amazon, and you may be wondering, so what's the problem? Well, it's one of those things where if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. In other words, Amazon uses Goodreads as a data goldmine that it has access to. This kind of information helps them sell the right books and more of them. Now, all of this, I guess, isn't really a problem until you take into consideration the huge monopoly that gives a website like Amazon in selling books at cheaper prices compared to a smaller seller or, I don't know, your local bookstore. In sad reality, when you're using something like Goodreads, you're helping Amazon. And if that's not something you really want to be doing, then being on the platform kind of clashes with those values, which is something I personally am still grappling with. You may be getting the picture by now that while I have made a decision, it's probably not the one that you or even I really wanted. So here it is. No, I'm not going to be switching from Goodreads to the StoryGraph. In fact, I'm going to keep using both platforms at the same time. There are things I don't like and things I do like about both platforms, but the one thing that's keeping me using Goodreads is the book page. It's just too useful to let go. In reality, I know I shouldn't be judging books by their ratings, but I do. So I want to use that platform to fulfill that just one task. While I'm there, I might as well post my reviews too. After all, I'll be doing it on the StoryGraph regardless. If the StoryGraph made a few changes to these book pages, I might be convinced to ditch Goodreads for good. The StoryGraph though will be used for additional things. I'll set up challenges, participate in and create buddy reads, although I'll keep read-alongs in my Discord community. I'll keep up with the format so I get the cute reading stats, and I'll continue to test out the new features you know they'll be releasing. I may even try out the StoryGraph Plus for a few months and share my thoughts on that too. I guess the general conclusion of this one-year experiment is that I really enjoy the StoryGraph. Sure, it can be a bit buggy and slow, and some of the user experience could do with some work, but it has allowed me to have a lot of fun with my friends and community this year. It's given me a really satisfying way to stay organized, and I'm really thankful for that. But enough about me, I would love to hear from you. How do you feel about both of these platforms? Do you prefer one over the other? Let me know in the comments and let's chat. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time for another video.